Hey guys, we are going to be using value to draw this. First, we're going to start out with a box. It's not going to be very big. Doesn't have to be straight, doesn't have to be amazing. So, we're going to start off by drawing. We have a floor here, and that floor has holes in it. So I'm going to draw some nice organic shapes. Keep them really big. And sort of close to one another. I'm going to fill that space with these holes. They're going to go close to one another. I'm going to have this one in the center. See how I'm making them nice and large and putting them close together. Here we go here. And from there, I'm going to create 4 boxes. Label them 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 1 is going to be white. Number 2 is going to be just a little bit darker than 1. Number 3 is going to be darker than 2, but not too dark. Because number 4 is going to be nice and dark. That's going to be our darkest. So we've created a nice little value scale here. And we're going to use that as reference because we're going to create 4 layers. So right now, I've got my first layer. Number 1, that's going to be white. Now I'm going to draw layer number 2. Now we want to try to keep the circles. We're going to draw, there's one floor down. We're going to draw holes in that floor too, but I want to try to keep them large, like the first set of circles were. Some nice organic shapes, but see how I'm making that kind of large? I'm going to be filling this space here. They're going to go under each of these lines. It's very important that they go under because this floor is down a level. So I've got a little space here. I'm going to draw another organic shape to fill that space. I'm going to make that a circle here. It's a little bit of an avocado there. So I'm going to keep going until I've filled most of that floor space below, trying to keep the circles larger. All right, so this is our second floor, and our second floor is going to match our second shade. So we're going to use our pencil to shade in the second floor just a little bit darker than the first. Just a little bit darker because we have 2 more levels to go, so we don't want to get too dark too soon. And so I'm going to make sure to do this entire level because I want to be able to differentiate this between level 2 and level 3. In order to do that, I'm going to color the whole thing in, just make it a little bit darker than the first layer. All I'm doing here are just a bunch of parallel lines very close to one another. I like to use a pencil that's not very sharp. This has a nice dull edge to it. And I'm using that to make it look like it's blended together. You can also use your finger to blend it. Personally, I don't because it's a bit messy, but a lot of people do. They just smudge the pencil to make it look like it's all close together without having the individual lines. So I'm just coloring each one. Every once in a while I can reference back to number 2 here Just a little bit darker. Be careful not to start going too dark by accident. So you still have 2 more layers to go, and you don't want to draw yourself into a corner and make it too dark. I've got one last little piece here that I need to fill in. This one's a pretty open space. I'm going to add a little bit more to this level here. All right, there we go. And we've got our nice second floor here. It's all darker than the first floor. And now, if we want to add a little bit more depth, everywhere that these cross over, we can create a little shadow. We'll go to where these cross. We're going to make it a little bit dark next to the lines, and then make it just a little bit lighter as it comes out. And so that looks, it gives the illusion, because this is just a flat piece, but it gives the illusion that they're above each other. And so I'll do that again on the other side. I'm just going to draw a little darker close to it, and then make the lines a little bit lighter as I move away. And already that creates some really cool depth to it. And so what you would do is, you can do this at the end. I'm going to do it at the end. I'm just showing you right now. A little bit darker here. Moving it a little bit lighter as we get away. And so that gives you a cool idea. All right, so now we're going to create layer 3. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to try to keep them big circles. I'm going to do a big organic shape here. They're not quite circles, because they just go in different directions, but those are the organic shapes. I'm going to try to create big circles here. So we've got this level here. I'm going to try to fill that space. All right, so that's where these 2 are. Let me add another one here. All of them are going under all of the other pieces. So this circle goes under this whole thing. I've got some more space down here. I'm going to try to keep them big, because it's easy to try to start to go small, and you don't want that. You want to try to keep them nice and big. I've got these 2, 3, 4. Oh, I've got some more space over here. I'm going to draw another one underneath all of these here, and then I've got a little space left over here. There we go. So now we've got layer 3. Now that we have layer 3, we're going to go a little bit darker than layer 2. So we're going to color in this third layer here, but you don't want it too dark, because you still have one more level to go. So you just want it dark enough so that it looks like it's below level 2, but not so dark that you take away from the last layer. So here, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to shade this whole thing so that I can tell which part is which. And all I'm doing here is just straight lines with a slightly dull pencil. That's all it is just a bunch of straight lines. I'm going to keep going until I have this third layer full. It's going to be darker than number 2. If I want to draw over here without smudging, I can use a piece of paper to put under my hand so that I don't smudge the other half of what I'm working on. And each time I can go back to number 3 and say, okay, I don't want to go any darker than number 3 because I still have floor number 4. And my shading is not perfect, and it's not supposed to be. We're not making perfect, beautiful pieces. We're just making something that looks kind of cool. Because we just want to make something that looks like it has a few layers to it and gives it a nice 3D effect, even though it's just a 2D piece. A little bit darker, not getting too dark. It's a little light there, so I'm going to go just a little bit darker. Just press a little bit harder, but not too hard, because we're going to be pressing really hard for the last one. Looks like I've got most of it. I've just got this one last piece here. Okay, now I've got my 3 layers, and I can tell which is which based on the value I used. There's white, there's slightly darker, and then if you want, you can add in some of the shadows, but I'd recommend doing that at the end. So now, the last step is to get number 4. We're going to make something we're going to draw it in so that it's nice and dark. So we're going to draw this here, and I'm going to press hard because that is my background. That's the deepest down. We're looking down through a couple of floors that have all kinds of holes in them, down into the depths where you can't even see where it goes. Except for this one. I'm going to press nice and hard. Helps to have my dull pencil. I really like using a dull pencil all the time for doing shading like this. I use a sharp pencil for doing detail. And then I use a dull pencil for doing any shading like this. So I'm going to make this kind of dark. But you see where sometimes if I want it to be there, it's not that dark. I want to make it darker. So the same as you do with cross-hatching, you can draw in a different direction. And so I'm drawing in a different direction here, and that is filling in a lot of those holes. And I can even draw in a third direction if I want. That's going to keep making it darker. So you can get all those pieces in there. I'm going to draw some of this here, and then this is the most satisfying part, because not only are you pressing really hard and making it dark, it's also fairly satisfying to fill in the rest of the piece, and it really starts coming together. See how that looks a lot more 3D? You've got level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. So the more we fill in the last of it here, the more 3-dimensional it looks in just a flat piece of paper. And that is what value does. We use value to create the illusion of depth, because we're not actually creating depth. We're only creating the illusion of it. And you can turn your paper at any time. If you want to be able to have a better handle on what you're drawing, you can do that here. I turn my paper all the time. Trying to draw here so you can see my pencil and see what I'm doing. Normally I'd have my hand a little closer to the paper, but I want you guys to be able to see this. Here we go. Drawing those straight lines close together. Just a bunch of straight lines. Everything in art uses lines of some sort, even shading. So I'm pressing hard here, filling in those spaces. I want it a little darker. I'm going to go in a different direction, still pressing hard. That starts filling in some of those spaces that I want. And it's not going to be perfect. Again, we're not trying for perfect pieces. If you try for perfect pieces all the time, you're not going to learn anything. You're just going to get frustrated, and you're not going to want to keep drawing. And it's very easy to just give up. But the minute you start doing something and you don't like it, that is when you step back and you say, okay, what is it about it that I don't like? Is it something that's not dark enough? Did I mess up a line? What did I do? And then you use that to learn from it. If it's something that you can fix, that's good. If it's something you can adjust for the next part of the piece and just leave that, that's good too. And then sometimes you just want to start it over again. You just want to do a whole new one, use what you learned to do that new one. And that is the best way to learn with art. Nobody is really good at art from the beginning. It takes a lot of practice, years and years and years and years of practice. So many years. And most of the drawings that you see from really good artists, they have a ton of bad drawings that they studied to get there. But they're never going to show you those bad drawings. Because all the good artists use studies to do things. They start by doing small drawings and they test it out and say, okay, I like this part, I don't like that part. And then they try a different study that says, okay, maybe I like this a little bit better, but I did this wrong. Okay, so the next study, I'm going to try this. And then from there, then they start doing those final pieces. All of the great masters, they have all kinds of painting studies that they did for their paintings. Just miniature versions of the paintings where they tested the lighting, they tested the layout, they tested all kinds of things before they did the actual full painting. Let's see. So I'm just going to keep filling this out. This looks right here. There's a big space that I don't like. I'm going to add another dark spot in there. And so you guys can go as slow as you want. Then once I add everything in, I'm going to start adding those shadows. Where these two cross here, just going to make it dark next to the edge and lighten it a little bit there. Nice little shadow. I'm going to do that on this side as well. Make it dark and then a little bit lighter. Not too dark. Make it dark wherever they cross, because this is casting shadows on all the parts below it. And so that starts creating that nice depth. So you can continue with your drawing, and I'm going to finish this one. Still doing straight lines here. Relatively straight. They don't have to be perfectly straight. Just pressing that pencil hard. This doesn't look perfect, but it's just for a demo. We're just practicing. We're not doing final projects here. Drawing in a different direction here to make it darker. Gotta flip it. Use my paper to put my hand on. So I don't smudge all of it. see what else we have left here. I've got this piece. So whatever space is left that's not the first level is going to be dark, because that's the fourth level. Make sure not to accidentally cover in the first level, because if you color that in, you're going to lose that depth. It's okay if you make a mistake. Don't worry about it. Here we go. I've just got that one more piece here. Trying to draw so you can see my pencil. It's a little awkward, but it still works. You can still see what I'm doing. I gave myself a little bit of an outline to work inside. That helps me just a little bit. So I'm not trying to end exactly at that line. It gives me something to color into, a little bit of a buffer. Now my pencil's getting really dull. I can sharpen it just a little bit at any point, but I won't make it really sharp. Really sharp is just going to give you very thin lines, and it's going to make it harder to color all these. Okay, so this is very rough, but you still get the idea. And now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to do that little bit of shading in between each piece. So this piece here, between 1 and 2, I'm going to make it a little bit darker close to the top one, and then a little bit lighter as I move further. Here's where 2 overlaps 3. I'm going to add just a little bit of shadow there. Over here where these overlap. So each spot where they overlap in whatever level, I'm going to create a shadow. You can overlap a little over here. Got some down here. And you don't have to be this far. This is just a demo to show you what you can do. Let me see if I can get all those spaces wherever they cross. I got most of these. Oh, I missed one over here. It's a little bit dark near the line, lighter as I move away. Everywhere they cross, a shadow is going to be cast because one is on top of the other. So just make sure whenever you're doing shadows, the shadow goes on the lower layer, because that's the one that has the shadow being cast on it. These here. I'm going to make the shadow a little bit lighter in between 1 and 2. A little bit darker between 2 and 3. You can see how I did that shadow there. I have a few places that I messed up, places where it's not quite as dark as I want it to be, places that are a little bit wobbly, but all of that is fine. It still gives you a piece like that. This was my other piece. This one's a little bit neater, but it doesn't have to be. So those are your results. See that? A little bit better lighting here. I have my handy dandy guide. And that's what you can end up with.